Lived in Peckham all my life. I lived at the same address all my life. I'm still living there now. Grandmother was from St Lucia. My mum came over in 1959 to England. My dad came in about 57, 58. That's when he came to England, and he sent for my mum, where she arrived on a boat in those days, because it's like geese and all, they used to control it, right? And plus, on top of that, my grandfather, he was a farmer on my dad's side, and plus they used to own, as you call it, they call it a rum bar, call it like a pub. They used to own that in those days. So the proceeds of that, my dad had 3 brothers, all ended up in England. My mum, when she was over here, she worked and she helped to raise 4 of us as boys in the heart of Peckham.
My mother lived in Andrews Road all her life until the day she died in East Dulwich. I lived there until I was 18. My father was from Mallorca, a place called Calvia. My mum married in 1961. He came to England, but didn't really get on with living here, partly because of the language problems. And they divorced and he went back to Mallorca. I have one brother who was born in King's College Hospital as well. We were all sort of always lived in East Dulwich, Camberwell, Peckham area. He's still living in the same house that my mum had been in all her life. Her parents must have been in there from about 1917, probably about 10 years before her. So overall, my family's lived in the same house for over 100 years.
I was born in Tanzania in 1940. I was interested in printing, so I came to London in 1966 in January. I did a short course in Elephant Castle, London College of Printing, and ran out of the cash, so started working as a student and then study in the evening. Got my first job within 2 years in the newspapers in Kilburn. So I've done a variety of a job in the printing industry. I moved back to London in 77 in Camberwell, and I've been here the last 40 years.
My great-grandparents moved here during the Windrush. I'd say that they were, I guess maybe the best way to describe them was like sort of economic immigrants, because the plan was to move over here for a while, earn a bit more money because there were not a lot of opportunities back home at the time, and then eventually go back. She's going through the process of retiring, but whilst working, she was a nurse at St. Elizabeth Hospital. Since I'd say maybe even a decade before I was born, she was living in Peckham, Montague Square. It was it was basically a second home for me. That's where I would go to when school was finished for the day, rather than going straight home a lot of the time.
I was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Half my family comes from Grand Rapids, my dad's side of the family. Only I discovered when I started working here that I sort of knew that my great-grandfather came from England. my mum's side of the family are pretty much all here in the UK because my mum was born and brought up in Edinburgh. I applied for and got accepted to Oxford, and then wound up going on an open day at the county level record office for Oxfordshire, and that was amazing, partly because Carl Boardman, who was then the county archivist for Oxfordshire, is a brilliant, passionate, deeply eccentric man who can make the past interesting to just about anybody. And that was amazing. So I had an absolute whale of a time and decided that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, which is unfortunate because the entry to that is a master's degree. So I spent a year living in London and doing the archives course at UCL, and then moved back to London in about 2008, I think. So I've been living here full time for about 10 years now.
I was born in Barnstaple in North Devon. I grew up living with my maternal grandparents. They lived with us in the house always. My mother, of course, was born in Barnstaple. My mother is actually now living in a house opposite the house that she was born in. My father came here as a refugee from Latvia at the end of the Second World War. So in primary school, people would ask, well, where is your father from? And I would say, well, he's from Latvia. You go, where's that then? Well, it's it's next to Russia. Oh, well, he's a communist then. And I never really knew what to say to that. I went with my father to a hardware shop. I would have been about 15 or 16. My father did a lot of DIY. I forget what he was asking for, but he just could not, on this occasion, get the words out. And the shopkeeper, he got very, very angry and frustrated with him and just said, oh, I don't understand what you're saying. Just get out. Just leave the shop. I don't want to serve you. I just don't. I can just remember feeling, always feeling trapped. Most people associate that with living maybe in cities or in very built-up areas, and Barnstaple is not a built-up area, and of course it's surrounded by a huge amount of space and countryside. So moving to London was just, when I got off the train at Euston Station, I felt very happy.
So my dad was a professor of computer science, and my mom is a mathematician. And so I have 4 siblings, and all 5 of us then actually proceeded to go into computer science. And my dad was born in 1924, so he studied in Munich after the Second World War, and to cut a long story short, eventually ended up involved with building some of the first computers that they had in Munich. He's also credited with coming up with the term software engineering. I moved to London because it was 5 years ago. Basically because of my then girlfriend, who is now my wife.
There's about, 100 flats in our building, and we know the names of exactly 3 people besides ourselves and we know the names of the concierge, but we know the names of 3 other residents, because those are the people who've knocked on our door for some specific reason. Everybody else is just a mystery. It's a little bit isolating and it's a little bit soulless. I mean, the vibe that you get walking down one of the corridors in our block of flats is a hotel.
I've remember Mum saying when they first came there, supposedly her parents said it was covered in ivy. It had no electric at the time. And I think my granddad had some put in downstairs. And I remember as a kid that we only had plug sockets downstairs and none upstairs. They had an outside toilet, no bathroom. And as the years went on, the landlord put a bathroom in when I was about 19.
In Montague Square with Mother, and then opposite Peckham Police Station with my mom. There's a garden to play in that we didn't have in Mum's flat. Mother had the garden. I enjoyed just having extra, essentially an extra place to play and to feel safe and and like extra family members to spend time with, to the point where I call my grandmother Mother.
It's a very small housing estate, only 250 houses, only 3 blocks of flat. There's a tall block of flat and the 2 lower ground. And I wanted to make sure that my children mix with everybody, so I went and joined the committee of the Tenants and Residents Association and I worked with them quite a long time. That way my children could join with everybody and go and play football, went swimming and went to school and met a few friends. But it was still segregating with the grown-ups. The grown-ups didn't meet or talk to anybody. If we went to the Christmas party, it was all group of cliquey people standing around talking to each other. It has changed a little bit now.
I remember the great days of having great fun in my parents' house. Our parents used to have parties regularly. Police used to come, neighbours would complain because there was always white around. Oh, they're always complaining, they're always having parties and this and that, can't stand it, bloody all music. And it was like, what? And the police would come round. They'd come in. There'd be Africans in there, there'd be Asians in there, there'd be whites in there, there'd be Caribbeans in there. And we all just had a good time. Curry goat in the mornings. I'll never forget that. I used to sleep. About 3 o'clock in the morning, curry goat goes around and that, you know what I mean? I used to have like your black pudding and stuff like that. It was nice times.
Gone to work, split up with my husband. We were divorced. Looked after the children mainly on my own. Did get married again, but it didn't work out. To an Albanian. And I'm still living in the same place with my youngest daughter and her baby and her partner and 5 cats.
On a personal level, my job, a lot of my job is just interacting with members of the public who are interested about the past. About a third, no, more like about 40% of whom, and I know that because I actually sat down and worked it out the other day, are locals. And Southwark locals are very, very friendly. Kind of lacking in an inside voice, if I can put it that way, and I don't know whether that's something about London in particular or Southwark Southwark even more particularly, it's almost like the history of dock working means everybody just got used to yelling and it's never quite stopped.
When I moved here in the 70s, everywhere they used to say, it's a working man borough, but historically it's very rich. If you look at it, you go back in the whole of Southwark is very rich, and people never realize that. If you look at the Dulwich Picture Gallery, it was the first picture gallery in England. They got history there.
Peckham had a very bad reputation. It was seen as in parts, a bit of a no-go area. Of course, that's only a partial story. It is where it is. It's always had a large amount of artists, creative people, quite a lot of comedians. But it's, you know, it's equidistant between two of the UK's major art schools, between Camberwell College of Art and Goldsmiths University of London.
Southwark has a very large Latin American population, and overall, you know, sort of a lot of non-British culture, and that's to a much stronger extent than you would have, like you would find in Munich. You know, there is a lot more sort of cultural diversity that you can find here. This is one of the things that I genuinely enjoy about living here. That being said, I'm of course in the fairly privileged position that, you know, I am white male, reasonably well earning, so I am in the demographic that suffers the least from, you know, all of the issues here.
It's not a bad area. We've had our fair share of trouble, abuse and knives and things. But I suppose that's because there's such extreme differences in backgrounds. You know, there's such diversity. And there's quite a big divide as the years go on between the richer and the poorer people.
Somebody I worked with for quite a few years at the Southwark City Learning Centre, a black single mother, and I was having a moan about something, and we always got on very well, but she didn't rather pointedly say to me on this occasion, "But Simon, that's not your world, and you have no connection to it." And she was right. My world in Peckham is a very different world than if I was a black teenage boy growing up in Peckham. That would be a very different situation. And I can't put myself in that situation because I have no experience of it. Only today, I was talking to my partner, and she had literally just left the library. It must have been less than half an hour before Damilola Taylor was stabbed. And yeah, it's about when you're in places where you're so close to where things are not right and where people are not getting on and where there is violence and aggression, and it wings you, literally.
Well, since my Tourette's became more prominent and started to occur a lot more frequently. I guess the way that people react to me has changed significantly. I'd say that 7 times out of 10 I do get like very negative sort of responses to it. But none of that deters me from traveling and speaking to people, because I just have to do it anyway. I have to get on with it. I was out shopping. I saw a leaflet laying on the desk on the till for art block. I was half and half on it because I was thinking, I already know what to do. I'm interested in artistic things and I'm into fashion. I'd have things I could share and things I could draw inspiration from. I did find the art block. I saw, and I just thought, I've never seen a space like this before. Yeah, and then eventually Jack and a former worker called Elijah, they both saw me at the door and they opened up and I just explained why I was there. And I had my tics went off, and Jack explained to me that I shouldn't feel discouraged for having it. And that if they like me, that won't stop me from getting a position. I was just feeling really assured after that. I was a lot more confident during the interview. I eventually got a position.
Where I live, there's a pub called the Nag's Head, which is sort of really quite a traditional style pub. A lot of characters, just typical South Londoners. Men at work, gone for a drink, just seem to know each other quite well. They seem to accept anyone who they are in there. Can be a bit temperamental at times. It was quite a relaxed pub.
And I think the pub is over 100 years old. They had to fight recently to keep it open because it was going to be knocked down. But Camberwell and SC5 Society fought to keep it open. We need places like that in a borough where people can go, and if that closes, I don't know what they will do, the people who are regular coming there. We got lots of houses going up, and I would say I haven't seen anybody from new build to come there because it's probably below them, I don't know. I find it very hard. I'm waiting to see when these new people move in. They built 400 new flats around. One I can look at from my front room, and one only 5 minutes walk. And I want to see what sort of people moving in there, and if they're moving in there, are they contributing local economy, meaning that are using local shops, local restaurants, and are they mixing with local people?
It's more that, like a lot of places in London, you have sort of, here is a privately built block of flats that is meant for the sort of, if I can say, yuppie demographic. And then across the street or half a block down or something will be a set of council flats that may or may not contain a large number of yuppies. If you've bought because the flats some of the flats anyway, have sort of gotten into the private property market. So it's much more mixed, I think, outside of our specific block of flats.
So I decided to start working in the catering trade. I used to work on Liverpool Street, Stripe Street. One day he came in and I was doing cooking and stuff like that. And my manager said, "Oh, she can't do cooking no more." I said, "All right." She said, "Tell him the truth." She was my friend. And he looked at her and he went, "Oh," he said, "That was the reason why, because you're black. You don't want no black man touching your food." I was devastated. I was. They were so stupid. They done the best thing for me. I didn't leave. I stayed on. 3 months down the line, company folded up. I went to work for Royal Mail. I went there. I did about a year. I was meant to be, they said a year, becoming a trainee chef, and I got there. You know, usual tricks. They made me a catering assistant, so I was serving food and stuff like that. You know, if I wanted overtime, what I do the tables and stuff like that. Yeah, so I do that. And then I was going on little courses here, there, like going to Smithfield Market and stuff like that, going for a week and learning about butchery and all that sort of stuff. Then I started working on breakfast. Then from there I did veg, then I did fish. Then from there I went on to pastry. Then from there I went on to mains, doing like meats and sauces. And that was good. I started learning everything.
I got a job as a care worker, and I used to work Monday to Friday. It used to be a job that I could take the children to school, be there to pick them up. It was mainly shopping and cleaning then. As the years went on, people wanted more sort of personal care. So the role changed, so we ended up sort of doing more personal care, which we never did before, you know, washing, feeding. Everybody's different, don't they? Everybody varies. The clients are all different nationalities. We've got carers from all different sort of nationalities. The job has changed a lot. You've got less time with each person than you used to have. Sometimes you've got like 45 minutes, and in that 45 minutes you're meant to get someone up, give them a wash, give them their breakfast, change them. You can't, and it's quite a rush. You moved around a lot more often to different people, and you don't spend as long with one person like you used to anymore. They wish they had more regular carers.
The certain changes are coming up. Me personally, I'm not happy. Gentrifying, the word they kept using. Because if you gentrify everything, where would the local people go who can't afford it? So you should still have it, certain things as it is. I know pie in my shop, I don't eat much pie in my shop, but it's there. But it's got a history behind it. You've got East Street Market, it's got a history, over 125 years old. You've got Peckham Market. We should never lose those things, because if we lose that, then you will lose the ethic of the people. And when people talk about community, I don't talk about the community where you go for prayer. I talk a community where you live. My community is in SE5, where I live in SE5. And the Peckham got their own SE15. But if we start introducing to say that it's a community because you belong to certain religion or certain sect of a religion, then you're breaking up the community. Community should be everybody together. Some places you were not welcome in some ways, but you just didn't go there. But you have to make an effort, and so many people just didn't make an effort to go there. They segregated themselves because on their belief. But I think you can still mix everybody, even if you don't eat the food or you don't follow the same religion. You can still go and be in a club member. And that's how the community happens. But if you divide the community up by religion or race, then you're breaking up the borough.
I'd say maybe 5 friends on a regular basis. Others I speak to over the phone or in texting. I'd say that there's one completely English, one who's with Irish ancestry but was raised over here. Say 2 Jamaicans but from different parishes to the ones my families come from. And 2 Ethiopians.
The people coming in, believe it or not, they're people who can afford to buy. You could call them middle class or call them whatever you want to call them, yeah? The people that can afford to go out and get a mortgage, right? But one thing I will say though, they'll get the mortgage. My colour, they don't really look at them. It's the true facts. What's going on out there? And they're coming in, alright, you're buying up. Right, you buy up. You're not even mixing with people here. You have your own little coffee shops, yeah, for yourselves. You have your own little nursery up the road for yourselves. Yeah, you got this, you got that for yourselves. It's great having all these things to yourself. But something you always got to realise in life, you get older, your kids get older. Yeah? So when your kids get older, how are you going to be able to segregate them still? They're going to want to come into that environment. Yeah? Because it's the unknown.
It used to be full of big shops, and now there's none left of them. None of the original ones. We used to have British Home Stores, Woolworths, all of them were up there. There's a lot of multicultural shops down there now, so it is very different. Under the arches in Peckham there seems to be a lot of bars for the young students. There's a lot more restaurants of all, well, every type of food you can buy. They've all opened up over the years. There's a lot of charity shops, betting shops in the area. Apart from if you live on the estates, the flats, all the houses going quite upmarket and middle class. People that can afford to buy them, because otherwise the price of property in London's so high. And really, if you're not in social housing, you haven't got any chance, if you're poor, to rent or buy. So the richer people are buying the properties. There's a lot of new builds. Some of them are for social housing, some private rent. But then a lot of those social housing ones, unless you're on benefits, the rents are still quite high. If you're just in an average working job or average employment.
The demographic was changing rapidly. And because everybody was leaving South East London to go to work and then obviously coming back again. And Peckham is only, on a good day, 11 minutes on the train to London Bridge. And what seems to have happened now over the last 15 years is people are working that out. This place is very central. it's changed. Transport links have made a huge difference. So the arrival of the overground a few years ago has opened up. It's connected up all parts of South London and South West London that were very difficult to get to. Peckham's actually a very nice place to live at the moment because it has a mixture of everything, and everybody seems to be rubbing along okay. But my assumption is there's a tipping balance at some point, and a population that has made its home there will slowly be edged out and replaced by what is, it's very obvious to see it, a much younger and I think I would say, I don't really like using the term white, a younger European population. There are a lot of people from a lot of places. But yeah, 30 years ago, it was quite difficult to use Peckham because there wasn't really anything there. Now there's plenty to use Peckham for. But for me, I have to say that the thing I use it for most is buying food. Food that I haven't seen before, and I have to work out how the hell I'm going to cook it. And that's just joyful.
The one time I have felt actively unwelcome due to being immigrant in general, it was actually being an American in particular, was about the first year I moved over to the UK. One of my then partner's friends, we were having a discussion, and we'd both been drinking, and he was a bit drunk, and I can't even remember why he came out with the comment, but he came out with the comment, well, at least I come from a civilized country, which was a little bit below the belt, but he almost immediately recognized that what he'd said had crossed a line and apologized. What I find completely heartwarming is after the election in 2016, when I would have expected there to be an uptick in commentary about "you're an American, how can you idiots be such idiots?" Instead, there's just been this enormous outpouring of support for, yes, we understand that this is an aberration and we will help you protect your democracy. Bernie and I went on the march after the day after the inauguration, and I think there were about 150,000 people on that march, nowhere near all of whom could possibly be American.
Well, my colleagues obviously, they are very, very nice people. There's also at work, there is an incredibly wide cultural background. And in London overall, there are, I think, a lot more immigrants. So, it is not like, that is, I think, what helps a lot with avoiding these kinds of intolerances. The contrary example to that is in some parts of Germany, which have much higher instances of racism and just in general xenophobic sentiments, and those are in fact they are overall economically weak areas of the country. They also are, interestingly enough, the areas that have a very, very low number of immigrants as well. People don't actually see any of the immigrants, so they don't. So it is much easier to demonize the dirty immigrants if they don't actually interact with them and get the chance to see that they are nice people.
You can be successful coming from Peckham. Loads of famous people come out of Peckham. Look at one of my mates on Telford Road. He did a book out. Another one on Telford Road. She's in EastEnders. Yeah, the range race went to Peckham. He landed top of the road from EastEnders. Great things does come out of Peckham. But I think the generation needs to know that. Right? There's great things that are coming out, and there's also good and bad people coming in. I've got my white friends, call them middle class, call them whatever you want to call them. They're great people. But you've got the other ones that they come in and they don't want to even talk to you. So there is some good that comes in. But the thing is, you know what? We'll always get changed once we're living. But it's for us, whether we accept it or not. And I always say change, you can't do nothing about it. You've got to accept it and you've got to work with it. But if you don't work with it, you've lost. The system's beating you.
And I think I take most people as they come. Some people you can feel a little threatened by. But I think when you get so many cultures, you've got different ways of life and style and different mannerisms. Some people you might find seem a bit abrupt, but once you start talking to them, get to know them, you realise they're not as abrupt as you thought. It's just their way.
On the whole, communication and just being able to share what you're thinking and feeling, despite other people agree or disagree, is really important. I think that we shouldn't be. I think that we shouldn't be scared to ask other people questions when we see something that we've never encountered before.